Gavin and Master Tesfatsion.
And a squad of big-name contributors.
The S Word
from talkSPORT.
Hello and welcome to the S Word from talkSPORT. I'm Gavin, Master Tesfatsion alongside me.
Good morning, America!
7 days, just 7 days until the start of the 2026 World Cup, and we have got a banger of a show for you today. We'll be previewing Groups E and F. Christina Unkle is going to be here to talk about some of the new rules at the World Cup. We've got some big name, opinionated, great guests coming on, like the Kev Hatchards, the Seb Stafford-Bloors of this world. It's going to be absolutely sensational, but we are going to kickstart the show as big as it gets. Simon Jordan's going to be here.
Making his S-word debut. The one and only Simon Jordan. And boy, do we have a lot to talk to him about, don't we?
Oh, it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. Get locked in on all of the social media channels so you can get in the chat at talkSPORT S-word on YouTube. You'll find us in the talkSPORT YouTube channel as well. We're on Instagram. We're on X. All at talkSPORT S-word. And also you can call the show. +44 03717 22 3344 on WhatsApp to get in touch. It'll appear on your screen as well. So give us a ring, give us a text, and get involved. Yeehaw. That's how we're starting, is it? That's how we're starting, boys. I see. We're in here. Simon Jordan's coming in. It's going to be a massive show, and you just absolutely mug me off moment one.
We're starting every show with a good yeehaw.
Yeehaw! Could at least do a good one. Like, that's the problem was it was the most lackluster yeehaw in the history of all time. Look, I say, Master, huge show coming up today. Also, African football expert Rahman Osman will be alongside us as well. He's starting to feel it. 7 days out. I know you came in early this morning, 7 a.m, appearance on breakfast.
Had a great time.
Stayed up for game one of the finals as well.
Enjoyed that as well. Haven't slept much, but
how much sleep have you had?
A good 3 hours. 90 minutes of those was in the green room this morning. But that's going to be the cycle we're on when the World Cup is on, man. It's a lot of these games are going to be at night, and we won't be sleeping much because we'll be enjoying every single match that you can find here live on talkSPORT.
104 games for you live across the talkSPORT network. Looking at that group stage, looking at the two groups we're going to be talking about today, Group E, Group F. Group F, for me, Netherlands, Japan, Sweden, Tunisia. That is just... that's where we're going to get some of our best games of the group stage, I think.
You think so?
Yeah, some tactical masterclasses in there, some top-tier teams. Then you got in Group E, Germany, Curacao, Ivory Coast, Ecuador. I mean, Ecuador, great showing 4 years ago. Ivory Coast going up against Germany. Am I saying Côte d'Ivoire? Should I be saying it?
You can say however you like to. I love when they say Côte d'Ivoire. But out of those groups, I'm not going to lie with you. I'm more interested in Group E. I think Germany, if they could find out who their striker is going to be, could be a dark horse team. Côte d'Ivoire is a very deep, very talented team. And Ecuador has the best defense in CONMEBOL. And if they can find a way to score some goals, hey, you do not want to face them in the knockout stage. And of course, Curacao, a great story as well. The smallest nation ever to make it to the World Cup. An island of only 300,000 people making it to the World Cup. An island really known for baseball, truth be told. But obviously a colony of the Netherlands and having a lot of players that were born in the Netherlands participating in this national team. So a Group E that is a tremendous story.
But we kickstart the show with as big a guest as they could possibly come ahead of this 2026 World Cup.
The World Cup bandwagon rolls on.
This World Cup will by far take soccer to the next stage in America.
Just love it. Love every moment because it is a beautiful game.
Lionel Messi pens the ultimate ecstatic chapter to complete his already extraordinary story.
They give us the faith to believe in these kind of things again.
Let the history unfold.
It comes to Vinicius Junior. 1-0.
Mbappe has a hat-trick. He has his place in history.
We are among probably the best team in the world.
A wonder goal from the Wonder Kids, Lamine Yamal.
Teams win championships. It's as simple as that.
Hey! 1-0 England.
And they can hardly believe it. For what a night this is for Scotland.
Every game's big in the World Cup.
All right, welcome back to the S Word. I'm delighted to say that joining myself, Master Tesfatsion in the studio. He's a talkSPORT legend, former Crystal Palace owner, a ball knower extraordinaire, and one of the very best to do it at talkSPORT. The brilliant Simon Jordan is here. Simon, thank you so much for coming in to join us.
It was nice to see you.
Look, before we get into, we want to talk to you a bit about the business of the World Cup, something you obviously cover a lot on your show on White and Jordan, but I saw a stat overnight last night, and it's been popping off in I know, Masters group chats. Did you ever think you'd see the day where there are more Crystal Palace players represented at a World Cup than Real Madrid? 14 Palace players, 13 Real Madrid players.
That's fantastic. I mean, I'm always wanting, as much as I possibly can, because of the legacy of Real Madrid, to find a way to denigrate them, because I hate this idea that they're just a destination club for all the big players, and that they've got this arrogance about their entitlement of not going to the Ballon d'Ors unless their players win, not playing in the World Cup Championship unless they get a certain amount of money because they generate that in every game they play in. But it's a wonderful time for Palace. It's a wonderful set of circumstances, and we have produced players over the years that have gone on to the international level, whether it be Nathaniel Klein, whether it be Victor Moses, whether it be other players under my tenure or previous owners of Crystal Palace, and obviously the current ownership. So I'm pleased, but the club has done remarkably well, so it's no surprise that there's a proliferation of Crystal Palace players playing across the Rubicon of the World Cup.
It was 12 Crystal Palace players.
Sorry.
To Real Madrid's 11 players that they had in the World Cup.
Fantastic.
But nevertheless, it probably signifies how competitive the Premier League is. And
very much so.
There's an argument to be made that the Premier League to win the title is even tougher than ever, because, as you talk about it...
This is an Arsenal fan talking.
I'm making an argument that when Sunderland's spending 150 million quid, when the worst team in the Premier League is making more money than most, if not all, domestic champions are...
Taking more money.
Taking more money.
Most of these clubs aren't making a lot of money.
That's true.
But they're certainly taking a lot of revenue. And that's the scale of football. That's the scale of the Premier League. That's the challenge that the other leagues around the world are trying to find a way to overcome. That's with the rest of the reasons why you see this idea of a 39th game or the game on tour. Being in America a couple of years ago when I was doing a TV show, meeting the MLS and talking to them about meeting Inter Miami's guys and talking to them about the franchise operation and the way that the construct of the MLS works and their aspirations for being one of the biggest leagues in world football. That's why this World Cup is fascinating, because the MLS genuinely believe that they can break into the conventional wisdom that the biggest leagues are locked away in the Premier League, in La Liga, in Serie A, in the Bundesliga, and perhaps the Eredivisie or the Portuguese leagues. They think they can get into the top five. I wouldn't put it against them, because I think the participation in amongst American kids and has been for some time significant. I put a team in the US in 2006, Crystal Palace USA. We were the first English club to set up a team in the PDG, and we played against the Columbus Crew and the LA Galaxy, and I saw the scale of opportunity in America to develop young players, send some of my kids out from Palace to play in American football during the time, because the seasons don't necessarily clash, except if you're in the playoffs at the back end of September, October. So the fascination of this World Cup will bring also, it's not 94. This is a different America, and the sport has moved on, and American ownership is now so prevalent in domestic football around the world that it's no doubt to me that somewhere along the line you'll see an amalgamation of the MLS or the North American leagues with another league, whether it be the Asian leagues or whether it be with the South American leagues, and then the Premier League will have a domestic challenge economically.
I do wonder, though, and look, this kind of comes under... I heard you talking today about the ticketing situation. Yep. FIFA left, right and centre have... every talk before this World Cup has been big questions to answer. But from a USA perspective, we talk to a lot of US journalists on this show. We talk to former players, and there is a feeling generally that maybe they have missed a bit of an opportunity so far with this. MLS stayed behind a paywall during this entire time instead of offering that opportunity for people to engage with their product. The fact that tickets are so expensive, it's...
But why did the MLS stay behind a paywall?
The thing is, so the MLS is going to be adjusting their league, right? They're going to be making it so they line up with the European leagues. Yeah. But for this year, they decided to stay pat, bracket the World Cup either side, and sit behind a paywall instead of offering the opportunity for, look, there's all this great football going on. You've fallen in love with it for the World Cup. Now come fall in love with Ireland.
Isn't that in part the commerciality of the Apple deal?
Potentially.
Yes.
So by definition, it wasn't a considered decision. It was a choice of, once upon a time, the broadcast deals in America, when Beckham went over there and the league started to get its own, the Beckham rule was introduced and all these sort of things started to come into play about players that can move outside the budgets, because obviously the constraints upon American football are geared in a certain way, as with the NFL and the NBA and all the other major sporting leagues. They are balanced upon a certain level of financial structuring which enables the franchise to be worth something. Mm-hmm. You don't see these franchises losing money, and you see the distribution. And one of the things I found fascinating about the American League was going over there with a sniffy European attitude, which you don't have relegation, you don't have jeopardy, and then realising actually that the participants in the leagues have such jeopardy because there's so many games that can go deep into the calendar, which means that there's so many outcomes that can be happened at the back end of the season. And of course, as an owner, I realised very quickly in talking to the Inter Miami guys that actually the owners are more important to some extent than the coaches and the players, because it's in Bob Kraft's world, he hands up, he's the one that holds the shield up. So there's a variety, but going to your question, the Apple deal was a revolution in broadcasting terms because the scale of it in comparison to the previous broadcast deals. Now, you can make the argument that it's a missed opportunity because it could have proliferated the product wider. And there's this argument in America about bringing these teams over, the European teams coming over. And the MLS say, we don't care. We think it's not a bad idea. They do care. They don't like it. No. And US Soccer, I don't think, likes it either, because they don't want European teams coming over there and showing the quality. Because I have to say, with all due respect, the quality that I saw was nowhere near a level that I thought it would be at. I saw Inter Miami versus St. Louis, and it was a poor performance and poor outcomes, and the only people on the pitch that were worth watching was, I think, a one-legged Suarez and obviously Messi.
Yes, he was jogging half the time.
But notwithstanding that, believe me, the American soccer, or what we call football, is going to pop, and they're going to be a player. They're going to be a player. And this World Cup will give it a prism. It'll be a whole raft of prisms that are going to be in this World Cup. We're going to have Trump. We're going to have a whole raft of things. We're going to have the backdrop of the Iran conflict. We're going to have a whole raft. We're going to have ticketing prices around FIFA and how far Infantino buries his head up Trump's backside. All of these things are going to come into play. But like everything, when the greatest show on earth rolls into town, the backdrop in Qatar of human rights, the backdrop in Russia will dissipate, and the football and the scale of a product which has 6 billion fans around the world. There's no sport like it. The NFL has its place and its space, and it's a wonderful sport. But this is the greatest show on earth.
Do you really think that'll be the case? Because there's an American hatred globally now that probably hasn't existed, at least in my lifetime, where you go around and there's this American fascination that every time I've traveled around the world, where now it feels like there's a bit more hesitation, a bit more backlash now.
No, I don't think so. I think once the tournament becomes underway and the football starts to do its talking and the quality of performances, and we get past the overinflated nature of the tournament, once we move past the dead rubbers, once we move past, with respect, the Saudi Arabias of the world playing Cape Verde, and we move into the knockout stages of the tournament, and we start to see the elite footballers perform, and we start to see the scale of the tournament, it will supersede the backdrop of whether people like Donald Trump or like the policies of America or like the fact that this superpower is throwing its weight around the world and throwing trade levies on different countries and whatever else. That will all be dropped away, and once the broadcasters stop posturing and postulating about what's going on outside of the tournament, and we see the football and we see that, it will be what it always is. And this will, don't be surprised. How can anyone be surprised that capitalism pervades this tournament when you're taking the football tournament to the most capitalist country in the world?
Which I completely understand, and I've heard you talk about this before. You don't have a right to a World Cup ticket. The idea of this, like, we should put tickets out for $50, $100, whatever that might be, to make sure the normal fan can get in. My concern is that, and this comes from the FIFA side, FIFA get to come in, they make their quick buck, they get out. Yeah. What does that leave the legacy for US soccer if you're not growing your fan base, if you're not taking this opportunity to find more people and turn them from casual fans? We've seen it. You talked about the NFL, right? Yep. The difference in the size of the NFL in this country, when they started bringing competitive games here, they started making it accessible to people, and it grew exponentially because it's an exciting sport and people bought into it. Sure. I think you get to a point where soccer is the third biggest sport in America, behind the NBA, behind the NFL. And I kind of feel like they're dropping the ball a bit on this by not making sure that happens this year when they've got the grandest stage of all.
There's nothing wrong with that thought process, but I don't think that's going to be the catalyst or the denigrator of the American opportunity to be a dominant force in world soccer. I think they will be because they want to be. And I think the once upon a time, it was kids played, I think you can speak to this better than I can, kids played soccer in college up to a certain level, then they pivoted off to the other sports. But that's not happening so much now, and also the broadcast deals from the Premier League that have been tied up previously are still there. There's more opportunity to see football than previously was the case in America. It's becoming such a growth sport. I was talking to Mark Warburton, the old Rangers and Brentford manager, who's over there in North Carolina, I think, with academies, and he's saying the level of engagement and the cost implications and the business model behind putting academies together and what people are paying for their kids to go and be trained at these academies is showing the growth pattern. So whilst you might be right, the opportunities might be missed. There's no perfect world. There's no perfect circle that gets squared. And the argument about FIFA, see, I don't know how profligate FIFA are with the monies, but the objective of FIFA, it's a not-for-profit. Its job is to be able to support the underbelly of football, to be able to make these tournaments make such significant returns that it gets invested back into the ecosystem of football. And you develop players around the world. I was talking to Arsene Wenger a couple of years ago about the opportunity to create better players around the world because the facilities are being put in by FIFA, and that then opens up a sort of runway of players that can come into domestic marketplaces. That means that there's more opportunities for players to play at higher levels rather than the big clubs snaffling up all the players because they can only have a certain amount on their roster. If you create better players around the world and have better markets, and if FIFA are doing its job by taking the money and the proceeds from these tournaments and dropping them into the ecosystem of football, it kind of defends their argument, or my argument on behalf of them, about how much football costs. In an ideal world, of course, you've got 6.5 million tickets available for this tournament, and there are 9 billion people on the planet, of which 6 billion of them are pretty much established as football fans. So 0.01% of people can actually go and watch a game. And of those 6.5 million tickets, I suspect some of them are the same people going twice. So actually only 3.5 million or 4 million unique people can go and watch this unique tournament. But FIFA's job is to monetize it as best it can, to make sure the tournament rock and rolls in terms of quality, and then to be transparent, not opaque, what it does with that money to benefit the game. That's the question.
Yeah, huge. Because, I mean, I think we all look at FIFA from the outside and we say, the theory behind that's lovely.
Yes, the reality.
Does that actually happen?
And it's about keeping them honest. And you have organisations that are running around that produce reports on FIFA and make them ask questions. And we do have this issue around transparency and the opaqueness of the organisation. And I don't see that changing because it's almost like the bloody Vatican when they roll into town, isn't it? And I saw it firsthand in Qatar when they're closing off roads. We've seen it recently when they asked, you know, that they could have a particular scenario in Canada. And fair play to the Canadians, they said, no, you can't.
Sorry, Gianni, you're not the Pope. As much as you'd love to be.
As much as you think you are, yeah.
You speak with so much confidence that this Americanization of soccer and this takeover is going to happen. And, you know, I experience in the comments, and many people do too, of this idea of America is always second class in the sport. Is there a global fear, you think, of that day coming to fruition, that America at some point becomes a dominant force in the sport?
No, I don't think you should fear something anyway. I think you should be aware of it. And, you know, and the reality of the American scale and marketplace. The one thing when I was over there, having built businesses in this country, having owned football businesses, having put a smaller franchise in America, is the scale of this country. You know, I made 100 million quid when I was younger in this country. If I had the same business in America, I'd have made 500 million quid. And I see the scale of the country. So I think with American ownership, so prevalent now in domestic football, in European football, it's evident to me that the American market is going to come. Now, whether it can unseat the orthodoxy, first of all, I think it's going to have to change its funding model, because I don't think... What do you mean by that? Well, the caps that you're putting on the salaries and so on and so forth, I don't think are going to work if you're going to try and go. But I don't think they're going to try up and... I don't think they're going to try and replace the Premier League. I think they're going to try and compete in that space. If you listen to Dan Countermarch, the operations communications director at the MLS, or if you listen to Don Gerber, they have their own position about where they think they're going to get to. Now, am I entirely confident and believe that that will be the case? No, I don't think they'll break into the top five, but I think they'll be meaningful. But I do think when they get their act together and they pair up with one of the other leagues, which is what I think will happen, the North American League might pair up with an Asian league or might pair up with the South American Fed, then I think you can commercialise it. Then you'll see what happens, because the big thing about football now is, as much as it's about the players and should always be about the talent, and it's not me saying this because I was one, It's about the owners now. It's about what the owners want to do and what their motivations are, and where they want to go, whether it's an influence play, whether it's a nation state, whether it's an oligarch, whether it's a hedge fund, whether it's a billionaire investor, whether it's Stan Kroenke, whether it's John Henry, whether it's a nation state owning a big football club that's now splintering out into worldwide representation inside the City Group. But all of it grows as sport. And the biggest thing that I've come to terms with being in the media, because I never really much liked the media when I was the other side of the argument, is that I've always wanted to branch out from sports and get into politics and economics and societal stuff and have my views on commercial things. But sport is so big and so influential. There's nothing like it, and there's nothing like football. You can go to any part of the world and have a conversation with somebody about sport. Look at the phenomenon of your team recently. Look at Arsenal. Look at the representation. They lit up the bloody Empire State Building in red and white, much to Piers Morgan's delight. And you saw...
Are we sure he didn't fund that?
No, hand in his pocket, Piers Morgan. We see, the scale of representation in African countries that were so enamoured with the Arsenal outcome. This sport, there's nothing like it in the world. And the reasons why the NFL has... I remember sitting with Mark Waller, who was the EVP for the NFL, and his job was to take it around the world because there was a need to do so, because it tapped out in the American marketplace. And one of the things that the massive advantage for the NFL was all the owners sit in a room with a collective outcome, which is, how does it benefit us all? There's no relegation, there's no jeopardy for us in this terms. If you can go take this proposition around the world and make more money for it, off you go. And so there's no resistance. In the Premier League, you've got 20 different agendas, and relegation as a haunted aspect. So you never find that concurrence that you can find in American sports. But in order, the irony, the juxtapose of that, for the American soccer market to become what it could become in terms of scale, it has to adopt a slightly European model. So it has this wonderful phenomenon of businesses being built in sport that are seeded in sustainability and profitability for the owners. But behind that, in order for it to be the most competitive and best version of itself, it has to take some of the European facets. Mm-hmm. We'll see how that plays out.
Well, the popularity, as you talked about, with the Premier League and the Arsenals and Man United's, obviously in the 2000s, the international rights, the broadcasting of that. Now we're kind of in this digital streaming era. And it feels like there's this other ushering that's about to happen digitally, just the accessibility of being able to watch every single match anywhere you want to in the world. What do you think that will do for the sport? And will it be the Premier League that benefits from that? Will it be a more profitable model like the Bundesliga in the way that they're being more sustainable? Will they benefit from that?
Well, the Bundesliga model is underpinned by 50+1 ruling, so it's got a different dynamic with the ownership of the fans. I've always been a major advocate, and I think I coined the expression about 5 or 6 years ago, that the Premier League should become a Netflix of football and become its own broadcaster. The Premier League has missed so many open goals. The NFL is a brand. It sells merchandise. Right?
You're good. We're on YouTube. We're fine.
Oh, I'm okay. The Premier League doesn't do this sort of stuff, so it's got so many things that it's missed. But the one thing that the Premier League could do is build out a play where it becomes its own broadcast proposition. It doesn't need the Skies of the world. It doesn't need the overseas deals that it's got. It could do it itself. You look at the scale of this. You look at the versions of Netflix that I've talked about previously. If you look at what Netflix generates, 320 million subscribers paying £9 or £10 a month. I don't think it's beyond the wit of man to suggest that the Premier League could get 100 million to 200 million subscribers. The biggest challenge that the Premier League's got at this moment in time, and Sky has got, Comcast, is churn and piracy. If you start charging people £9 a month, your churn is gone because there's no resistance to it. You'll always have people that want to pay less than that, but predominantly people can wear £9 a month. They can't wear £99 a month or £150 a month. If you can channel the Premier League through its own distribution, it's starting to do it. It's taken away the overseas stuff from Premier League Productions and IMG and starting to do its own stuff now. That's the first step, in my view, to building out its own opportunity to be its own broadcaster. Then it streams. If you start putting 100 million subscribers on a Premier League version of Netflix, you're generating £1 billion a month, £1.2 billion a month, £1.3 billion a month, £1.4 billion a month. That's 16 billion a year before you get into advertising revenues. So all of a sudden, the 5 billion you're getting from the current broadcast deals, which include overseas and domestic, and the domestic rights are in this country diminishing because you're having to give more to get the same. If you can get up to that level of 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 billion a year out of the broadcast revenues that the zones of the world are trying to do in boxing and the Netflix of the world are doing both now in entertainment and sport, making sport part of the entertainment package, then all of a sudden the scale is astronomical. Of course, you've got more infrastructure costs, and you've got to produce indigenous talent.
That's always the biggest thing.
But it doesn't matter about that. The only thing you need is a runway. Yeah. You need to be able to say to the Premier League football clubs, it's going to take us 3 years to build 100 million subscribers. Who's going to bridge the gap between 2, 3 or 4 billion a year that we're getting currently? That's a deal you do with a JP Morgan or someone of that nature.
Goldman Sachs.
So the scale, Goldman Sachs. So the scale is enormous.
If you think the Premier League dominates in Europe now, imagine if we were making £18 billion a year as an organisation. Those Europa Leagues and Conference Leagues are going nowhere.
Sure, BlackRock would love to tap into. There's so many people that would love to tap into. Absolutely.
Simon, brilliant stuff. We really appreciate you coming in to join us. We look forward to seeing what you do out in the States with White and Jordan and with the podcast and everything else. But we appreciate your time. Thank you so much,
You're welcome.
Sir.
Nice to see you, fellas.
Brilliant. Simon Jordan joining us on the S Word. Coming up, we'll preview Group C and Group F of the World Cup. Some big names coming in to join us for those. And of course, later in the show, Christina Unkle will be here. Clear and obvious. Are these new rules? I'm not so sure.
From kickoff to the full-time whistle,
talkSPORT presents
the S Word.
cuss words here. Just 2 hours of full-on football dialogue.
Every day.
talkSPORT presents
the S Word.
You're back with the S Word from talkSPORT. Will Gavin, Master Tesfatsion alongside me, finishing his much-needed coffee. I get it, man. I get it. You stayed up for game one. I could not do it. It was amazing. I could not do it. And then he was in doing breakfast this morning. Hardest working man in all of radio. Thank you again to Simon Jordan for joining us to kickstart the show. So much good stuff in there that we can get into with the US elements of the tournament, about the growth. And listen, we've got some big interviews over the next couple of days where we might be able to get a few of those answers.
Hopefully. Got we'll don't want to spoil too much, but hopefully we have some good segments for you guys tomorrow.
But let's get into our previews, and we're starting today with Group E. Germany as our focus, very much the favourites to get out of this group. So who better to join us than friend of the show, the Athletics brilliant Seb Stafford-Bloor. Seb, how are you, brother?
I'm doing good, guys. Thanks for the round of applause and the warm welcome.
Hey, you're always welcome here. Don't you worry about it. Seb, how is the feeling in Germany going into this group, going into this World Cup, where a rarity, they're outside of the favourites, but still, like, it's weird to think of Germany as a dark horse team.
Yeah, I suppose because of the back-to-back failures in 2018 and 2022 when they were eliminated in the group stage, there's a bit of trepidation. Some of the morale and ego around the national team was recovered at Euro 2024 when they reached quarterfinals. And immediately afterwards, the World Cup was talked up as Germany could win it, Germany could win it. And we've kind of spent the last 2 years in the country kind of talking the chances down and worrying about little things and fretting about goalkeepers and retiring and then unretiring Manuel Neuer. So it's a bit of a jumble. Good showing in the first preparatory friendly against Finland. That helped, that 4-0 win. But cautious optimism. Let's not say outright favourite. Cautious optimism. Let's call it that.
Because I do feel like this is going to be a very competitive group, with Germany obviously being involved, Cote d'Ivoire as well. And then Ecuador, I think, is a sleeper considering how defensively stout they are. When I look at this Germany team, though, my biggest question is who's going to be starting at striker? Is it going to be Voltemade? Is it going to be Kai Havertz? Who is going to be the man up top that will receive some great service probably from Jamal Musiala and Florian Wirtz?
Yeah, great question, Master, because this is a kind of another preoccupation. I think Kai Havertz, because traditionally that's what Nagelsmann has preferred. He likes Havertz's movement off the ball. He likes the ability that he has to bring some of those attacking midfielders, Jamal Musiala, Florian Wirtz. We now have Leonard Carl. Carl started against Finland in that 3, which, hey, you know what? If that gels as a 3, that's an amazing attacking midfield, potentially. Let's see if that works. And Havertz is a great facilitator, great pivot. You know that better than me. Bit of a fan favourite, Dennis Undav from Stuttgart, who's been prolific. Nobody scored more goals in the Bundesliga than Undav did last season, other than Harry Kane. So that's pretty esteemed company to keep. Undav, not quite the same player, a little bit more of a traditional 9, although he has some number 10 attributes. So I think it's between those two. I think Havertz starts. I think Undav is the first option off the bench. And then Voltemade, I think, represents a little bit of a change of direction because I think he's slightly more of a 10 than a 9, Master. That's just my opinion, but I that's where I prefer him. So, that's probably my ranking heading into the tournament.
You in Newcastle at this point. it's interesting how that position has evolved for him. But I guess the other question, too, is in terms of center backs. Who do you go with? I know we've been so accustomed to seeing Rudiger back there, but is that, do you stick with Tan Schlotterbeck? Like, what is the pairing, the center back pairing that you think Nagelsmann will roll with?
Yeah, I think Nagelsmann goes with Tah and Schlotterbeck for a couple of reasons. I think there's a nice balance to that. I think Schlotterbeck obviously gives you a left foot, which is a different exit angle out of defense. Also, that scalpel-like passing, great at moving the ball forward, which is, as you know, again, it's a staple of Nagelsmann football. So you need to have that for Germany to function. I think Tah is, I wouldn't describe Jonathan Tah as a stopper in the kind of the old-fashioned sense. He's pretty progressive, as far as the kind of the centre-back spectrum goes, but there's a balance there. Rudiger not had the very best season with Real Madrid. Been a few weird moments in his season as well. I think it's fair to say a few difficulties. There's been a few some things that have happened that have provoked some conversations in the German tabloids and the German sports media. And then you have Vladimir Anton as a backup there. So I think we certainly start with Tah and Schlotterbeck in the heart of a back four, definitely.
But when you're going to be fighting against Ecuador, a very physical team that's going to be very tenacious, you kind of want a Rudiger in that, for better or for worse, to kind of give a punch back that Ecuador is going to provide, and even Ivory Coast. Like this feels like between those three nations, and I'm not disrespecting Curacao at all, but it feels like it's going to be a battle between those three nations.
That sounded like an exclusive to me. You just dismissed Curacao. No hope. Don't even turn up. Don't play the games. Hey man, that's what I heard. You do raise a good point though, because I think with Germany, it's a little bit of a compromise, because Yeah, you have to have that physicality in a World Cup, but also Germany's great enemy at tournaments previously, certainly in this generation, has been chance creation. And so I think this is the Schlotterbeck issue, right? I think you prioritize how quickly the ball moves, how efficiently it gets into midfield. And you mentioned we talked about Karl and Musiala and Wirtz. It's really important where those players receive possession, right, Master? Because if they're always facing, 2-on-1s, if they're always being double marked, if they're receiving the ball with their back to goal and slow with, a bank defense in front of them, it's going to limit their effect. And so I think that influences the centre-back selection. And so I think that's why we go Schlotterbeck, Tar, because I think that gives them the best opportunity, certainly at group stage level. Maybe as the tournament goes on, maybe you start to defer a little bit more to security, because Schlotterbeck, brilliant footballer, I would only describe him as a good to very good defender. I think that's a very fair assessment. I don't think he's an outstanding player without the ball. He's just a good one. So that might change. But certainly in the group, I think that has to be the emphasis.
Talk to us about the opening fixture. Like you talked about the humiliating group stage exits at these previous two tournaments. So how much focus, how much pressure, how much, has Julian Nagelsmann got to get it right from the off?
Definitely, because you know what, like when you've had failures like that, and when a country like Germany goes out in the group stage, it becomes almost a national event, to the point where people kind of disengage from the national team and start migrating back towards their clubs and not really investing, not really caring. When it happens twice at consecutive World Cups for a country of Germany's size with their World Cup pedigree, it's a catastrophe. Now, what you don't want as Julian Nagelsmann, two things. Firstly, to invite all of that negativity to come rushing back straight off the bat. You got to be convincing in that first fixture. You've got to put yourself in a strong position. The other thing, and this might not be apparent for anyone outside of Germany, but Nagelsmann's received plenty of criticism, actually. People have talked about the conservative nature of his selections. People took umbrage with, for instance, Leon Goretzka being picked, with Leroy Sané being picked ahead of Syed El-Mala, the fabulously gifted Cologne wide forward, who became a kind of a neutral favourite. People want to see young, cultish players given a chance for the national team. Now, if things don't go well immediately, that conversation gets really, really, really loud, and it's going to be focused on Nagelsmann. And I wouldn't go as far to say that he's under pressure in the traditional sense going to this tournament, but he can do with changing the narrative a little bit. And the first step, get off to a good start, because we've got so many teams in the World Cup now, and because you have that safety net of the third place qualifiers. If you win your first game, it's really hard to go out. You have to do a lot of things really wrong in the next two games. So that quietens everything down, settles Germany into the tournament, perhaps gets rid of some of the neuroses lasting from that have been carried over from 2018 and 2022.
Well, thankfully they're facing Curacao first in Houston, so
it's a free bet apparently. It's
don't rate Curacao.
6-0, 8-0. Who even knows? Like get on the over under. That's what he's saying.
I love Curacao. That's a baseball nation. But with Nagelsmann, going back to him, I guess the knock on him has always been that he's very stubborn, and obviously what happened with the end of his stint at Bayern Munich. He was the young hotshot manager in European football. He's going to turn 39 in July. How crucial is this World Cup for not just only Germany, but for Nagelsmann to maintain his reputation that he had as one of the brilliant tactical minds that people thought he was coming up?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, because essentially the way you're examined as a national team head coach is very different from the work that you do as a club head coach, because for months at a time, you're really out of the news cycle. You don't really have an opportunity to demonstrate your working. And that gap gives the opportunity for people to kind of spin narratives and develop negativity and that kind of stuff. So very, very tricky. I think for him, it's really important. I mean, the way you said, I kind of resent the way you said 39, because I'm 41. That didn't make me sound any younger. I can't really get past that.
You and me both, brother. Forget this young buck next to me.
Exactly.
I feel your pain.
Yeah, right. But I think it's probably two different questions, Master, in all seriousness, because very important for Germany, restore some national self-esteem around the football team. I think for Nagelsmann, whatever happens, I think he retains his cachet, because I think who he is in club football remains the case, however Germany do in the next couple of weeks. Because like once you've established yourself as a name, you know what it's like. People get on the merry-go-round, you get opportunities, and Nagelsmann has a few things he certainly has a few things to prove in terms of how he handles big egos, how he handles big club life, because you mentioned what happened at Bayern Munich. It didn't end well. I think there's a little bit of regret at the time from Bayern that it didn't kind of work out. And there was also kind of a suggestion that, hey, maybe we'll revisit this in the future. But that's what he's got to prove. Like, can you go into a club at the very, very elite level and handle the environment? Can you, he's got an intense guy, particularly on the touchline. Does that work in the big club environment? He was really criticized often for how he responded to, for instance, refereeing decisions when he was Bayern Munich's head coach. So a lot of the things that he needs to prove are going to have to be proven outside of the national team environment. So it's kind of on pause until that moment happens. And he has a contract which actually takes him out beyond this World Cup to the next European Championship as well. So it's not necessarily given that he immediately after the World Cup defaults back into European football. But let's see. I think there are some question marks. What I would say, just as a parting thought, is when they left the 2024 camp, a lot of the Germany players spoke very, very highly of the atmosphere that he was able to create and the man management that was done under his watch, which is perhaps a little bit contrary to the perception of him, which is a sort of a taskmaster, a my way or the highway guy. Not really true. It's a little bit of a misconception. And, a lot of these Germany players like going to international duty. And that's a great success for Nagelsmann. Again, maybe it's not relevant to the club environment, but it is an interesting point.
They used to call him the mini Mourinho.
Yeah. There was a point where he was expected to be the next big thing, and what happened at Bayern Munich, obviously unfortunate. So you kind of hope for him. It's been a rehabilitation. To be a rehabilitation, though, Seb, how far do they have to go? How far do you think they're going to go? What are the expectations in Germany for the tournament?
Well, having just put up my wall chart and plotted my way through the tournament.
Have you already filled it in with all your predictions? 2 wall charts?
No,
because and one for the actual tournament.
You only ever do that. You only ever make that mistake once in your life, and then it humiliates you and you don't do it again. So it's nice and blank, and it will stay that way until the games start. I think par, so to speak, is probably semi-finals. I think
okay.
If they get to the semi-finals, Germany, depending on how the draw pans out and who goes where and what the bracket looks like, of course, those are the caveats. But I think semi-final becomes very respectable. Everybody's able to walk away from the tournament thinking, job well done. We're back as a powerhouse in world football. Anything less than that, or even like a really bad result against a not lesser nation, but a nation with less World Cup history than Germany, and then the conversation about talent development starts and why are we picking these players? Is it about reputation or is it about form? A lot of these conversations that people from England will recognise from the golden generation, because that's a debate in Germany too. So yeah, semi-finals, all is good, alles gut, aber less than that, maybe not.
Alles good with Seb Stafford-Bloor. Thank you very much, sir. Really appreciate your time. Beautiful stuff from him. As always, looking forward to Group E. We will touch on the African side of things coming up in the second hour of the show as well. Rahman Osman will be here, African football expert, and we'll talk some Ivory Coast, and we'll talk some Côte d'Ivoire, and we'll talk some Tunisia as well, as we're doing Group F in the second hour. I do have to ask, Master, before we get to Christina Unkle, is the wall chart phenomenon something America understands or that you've been familiar with in your lifetime?
Wall chart?
There we go. Oh, I can't wait to introduce you to a wall chart.
Like writing...
It's literally every newspaper will produce one. I saw 442 are selling one on TikTok. Like, it's literally like when you were a kid, you got a big poster with all of the fixtures, all of the groups, going down to the final, and you filled it all in as you went through, and
of course we have that.
Yeah, I didn't know if you did. Like, it's a bit like a bracket for like a March Madness.
We call it a bracket,
right?
That's what it is. It's a bracket.
Was it like
it's a bracket.
For me, it's like hanging your stocking up at Christmas. It's going through your advent calendar. Like, get your wall chart going up is a big moment in a World Cup. And a week out, get your wall charts.
I use too many words to say something very simple. Just say a bracket.
No, it's a wall chart, though. It's very specifically.
It's a bracket. It's a bracket.
Are you putting a bracket on the wall?
Yeah.
I thought we didn't have another break here. I thought we were going straight into Christina.
No, there's literally a bracket on the cafeteria room.
What is this? All right, this is the S Word. Christina Unkle up next.
Big name reaction from both sides of the pond.
The S Word
from talkSPORT. football in North America. And I mean the proper kind, where you only use your feet.
The S Word
from talkSPORT.
Back with the S Word on talkSPORT. Will, Gavin, Master Tesfatsion alongside me. Coming up in the second hour of the show, Kevin Hatchard will be here with us, European football expert, as we move our attention to Group F. The Netherlands and Sweden, both in that group with Japan and Tunisia. Plus, Rahman Osman, African football expert. We'll talk Tunisia. We'll talk Cote d'Ivoire in Group E as well with him. A couple of bits of breaking news just to alert you to. Andoni Iraola, it's been reporting, has touched down in Liverpool. An announcement is expected imminently. talkSPORT understands. Could be today, could be tomorrow, but certainly in the next 24 or so hours, we expect Andoni Iraola to be confirmed as Liverpool manager. And also, Khalid Al-Mubarak has done his annual interview on the City website and has said that they expect to keep winning without Pep. So there you go. Their expectations being
There's
set
115 reasons that could potentially change, but we'll see. I guess winning championship also counts, I guess, as winning.
Let's talk some clear and obvious, because have we got the new? I'm going to apologise for Christina for this before we get her on and before it happens.
This is what she wanted.
This is what she wanted. She wanted intro music. She wanted her WWE theme.
I don't know if it's going to
Let's go to clear and obvious.
Clear and obvious with Christina Unkle on the S Word.
Okay, that's terrible. That's terrible. I needed a jingle.
The back half of the jingle's good.
I needed
the
a
back
jingle.
half of the jingle's good.
It wasn't even a jingle. It was just he just did a voiceover. I need a jingle for this one. I'm sorry, Sam. That's not good enough. Let's get back in the
Sam's getting ripped up.
Yeah. We have got the great Christina Unkle on the show, though. Christina, thank you so much for joining us. Beautiful to see you and hear from you as always. Let's kickstart with the offside situation, because we talked a lot about the new rules coming in for this World Cup, how VAR will affect it. But talk to me a little bit about the situation with VAR, where we're not sure if sideline officials are not raising the flag early because they want to let the play develop. They know VAR will pick up on it. Semi-automated offsides coming in. It sounds like we're going to take another step forward in that becoming just a absolute dyed-in-the-wool decision.
Yeah, that was easily one of the quickest frustrations from players, from technical staff, with the argument of potential injuries, as well as continuing to track when it was very clear that somebody was in an offside position. But because of the VAR protocols, the instruction to assistant referees was to hold their flag, even if they're confident that it was offside. But if there was any kind of line of doubt or potential doubt, to allow the VAR system and protocol, in case the ball went in the back of the net, to check the system. Now, with the introduction of, which has been trialed, by the way, so it's not like it's being introduced for the first time, it's just being allowed to be performed here at the World Cup, is the technology is now allowing a quicker recognition. And this is just all with the significant investment into this technology, right? That's scanning the bodies, 3D visual bodies of all of the players that are coming in during check-in, that now allows the offside line to basically just for the distance to be more accurate. So instead of 50 centimeters, it's now 15 centimeters. It's a noise that goes into the assistant referee's ear when someone is greater than 15 centimeters from the body parts. And that allows the assistant referee more, I wouldn't say confidence, because they've always had the confidence, but it allows them to rely on the technology to raise their flag faster than to hold their flag down. So hopefully this alleviates some of those concerns and really kind of removes the definition of an assistant referee determining whether it's a tight offside or not.
But I still have the concerns, because we saw what is in 2022 where we offside calls being, a toenail with this kind of the lack of margin for error. Is that basically what we're going to see more of because of this enhanced technology?
So the toenail offsides will continue to be alive and well. So the technology here is, if anything, going to be even more accurate. It's really just to kind of help when we talk about how, if somebody's still tight in active play, and we're just talking about their position, right? Not a subjective offside. And so if I've lost anyone, there's actually 4 different types of offside. Yes, probably people didn't know that, but we're really just talking about the distance offsides, right? When someone's, interfering actually playing the ball and moving into that direction. But you will still have offside by the smallest of margins. And it gets even more smaller because the technology is better in this tournament.
It doesn't feel like it's in the spirit of the rule to me. It just doesn't feel like the idea of offside being introduced and the reason for it being there. Like, if a player I understand, right, if we talk about a lot of these are where, say, a player goes slightly early on a run when the ball is being fed through to them, etc. Like, I just feel like sometimes those decisions are so tight, and we see where we have to freeze frame and flick between two frames, and when was the ball kicked and everything else that goes along with that. And I just think that doesn't feel like why the offside rule existed in the first place, and that actually there needs to be some kind of margin. There needs to be something that says it's not offside unless it's actually like clearly and obviously offside.
So hey, clear and obvious, that's our segment.
Yeah,
but
there we go.
I do truly appreciate your point, because whether it's laws of the game, whether it's laws and, whether you blame that on my legal training and education, is you always have to go to the purpose and reason why there's a law in the first place. So I love this because there is something we call the spirit of the game, right? And people hate it because they're like, well, spirit of the game could be used in different ways. But I'm like, sure. But at the end of the day, and you could talk to, I've talked to active footballers, past footballers now as pundits. And I said, like, what is the purpose of this? And they said, it's just if someone's gaining an unfair advantage, right? If there's a disadvantage because somebody's in a position that gives them an unfair advantage. If somebody is 5 centimeters difference, a defender would not argue that as an unfair advantage. And a defender would argue that they were just basically themselves out of position and probably not playing the ball. But it's not something that really puts them at an unfair advantage. So I love that you say, let's go back to the root of the cause. Let's start building or modifying the law based on that purpose and saying, okay, what we really want is those situations where someone is truly, truly an unfair advantage. So I remember there was conversations. I think Arsene Wenger was a big champion of advocating, let's change the line. Correct. All those things. I'm like, well, now we're just arguing about the line still, but we're arguing about the line on a different body part. But I'm with you. It should be one of those where it's just very, very clear that there is a distance between the players, not that is there a body part significantly, but more of a distance, because that's where we talk about, is that an unfair?
It's just, couldn't you simply like make the line thicker? Couldn't you just simply say, it's, yes, they are past the line, but the line at the point we're giving you this 30 centimetres or whatever we want to say it is, where like you have to be beyond that point in order for it to be offside. It feels like a simple fix to me, but it feels like something that has to be globally agreed upon. Otherwise, it's just going to get really...
Or like hockey, the last body part.
Yep. The last body part is what they were talking about. I actually just really like the fact that there's no body part touching whatsoever, right? That there is actually a distance and there's a certain distance about it. I personally, if anyone can get me an iPad, please do. Apparently, I think I have to have a UK citizenship to do so. But if anyone can get me an iPad, I like the distance between. I like that there's actual physical distance between, because if we do the last body part like in NHL and hockey here in America, you're still fighting over that line and whether that line is on a body part. So we just have moved the argument to a different body part.
Every other Brit is looking for citizenship in another country. Christina's looking to get citizenship here. Astonishing.
I want to touch on, though, what happened in this Japan-Iceland friendly, because we got to see some of these new IFAB rules that we're going to see in the World Cup having a significant impact in this game. Japan won 1-0 as part of one of the rules. Players have 10 seconds to leave the field at the nearest point when substituted. Iceland didn't. They were down a man as a result of that, and Japan was able to score in the 87th minute to win this game. Is this a commonality that we're going to see all across this tournament? Because it's such a huge shift for what we've been accustomed to seeing in football.
Yeah, so it actually happens here domestically in Major League Soccer. That rule has been implemented, and we noticed in the first couple of weekends of that rule it's an adjustment. It's a fix. The players they're not thinking about it, because that's not how they don't go into a game thinking about the new rules and whether that adjusts or not. So you will see that in group stages, the first couple of games, where you're seeing players and teams, even though they might be actively thinking about it, and all these rules have been briefed to them by Colina prior to in the referee department, you'll see them forget about it and then have to make that adjustment. So these friendlies are actually really helpful for that. They're helpful for not just the teams, but they're also helpful for the officials. I remember refereeing pre-tournament friendlies, and they just allow us to put the rules or the laws that are being implemented into practice so that everyone can kind of get this out, kind of get more familiar with it. So if there are teams that are not probably more proactive about it in these pre-friendlies, you'll start seeing some of this in the first couple of stages of the games, and then people will adjust very quickly. And that's the whole point of a law, right? You implement the law because you want to see behavior change, and behavior is going to change very quickly.
Yeah, I think best possible scenario for IFAB was for this to happen during a friendly, so that everyone could see it happen and go, I do not want that to happen in a competitive game. I do not want that to happen when actually there are points, group stage, qualification, everything else on the line.
No, agreed. very, very much so agreed. And then any kind of other kinks that we're getting out. So, and a lot of these officials that are refereeing these pre-friendly games, they're not the World Cup officials, just FYI. All of the FIFA World Cup referees reported to camp on Sunday in Miami. So they are training and getting ready, but you still have high-level officials that are working through this process. And I know that the games are being watched by the FIFA referee department to use it as videotape while the other referees are currently in their preseason camp before the World Cup.
I love the idea of the referee preseason camp. Hilarious. Christina, wonderful stuff from you as always. Thank you so much for joining us. The brilliant Christina Unkle. Clear and obvious. I don't know. I kind of feel like the thing that still needs to be clarified a little bit, and I haven't seen anywhere, and Christina, we were slightly wobbling on her line a bit, is that thing of like, it was over a minute when they scored. So do they get waved back on by the official? Does the fourth official just let them go on? Like, all of that stuff just, it still feels a bit messy to me. I still feel like they should have introduced this maybe a year ago to international friendlies ahead of a World Cup. They had a Club World Cup to test some of these things. Just, you know, doing it 2 weeks before a tournament feels a little bit stupid to me.
But we're here. Ain't not much else we can do about it.
I'll give us some entertainment, I'm sure, until it costs England or USA a game of football, and then you and I will both be banging the table lividly. Next hour of the show, we're going to be turning our attention to Africa and Europe as we preview Groups E and Groups F. Rahman Osman joining us up next on the S Word.
From the touchline to the terraces,
talkSPORT presents
the S Word.
S Word,
featuring Will Gavin and Master Tesfatsion,
and a squad of big-name contributors.
The S Word
from talkSPORT.
You're back with the S Word on talkSPORT. Big hour coming up for you on the show. Rahman Osman's going to join us to talk some African football ahead of the World Cup. Group E and Group F are our focus today. And we'll also have Kev Hatchard in just a moment talking about that Group F. Huge with two.
Put that microphone down. You're good. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm all right. I was just fine holding it here. I just wanted to get it off the desk, but now you've called me out to the world. There we go. See?
You want to lean over here intentionally? This wasn't...
just move yours as well out of the way, shall I? That'll be better for everyone.
Rubbish.
Listen, Big Al was back today, by the way. Big Al back on talkSPORT. Absolutely love to see it. And hopefully back in the studio very, very soon. I'm sure he'll be happy to join us on the show to talk some Scottish football as and when he does. Listen, we also had Simon Jordan on the show already today, so if you've not had a chance to catch that, that'll be going up in full on our YouTube channel at talkSPORT S Word later in the show. And also, you'll be able to see clips on it on Instagram, on everywhere else. And so go and join us on all those lovely social medias there, please. And thank you. But let's keep our World Cup previews going, Master.
Let's do it.
With Group F. And the main man. Talking some Netherlands, talking some Sweden. Also, I'm sure he probably has an opinion on Japan and Tunisia because he is a football savant. Kevin Hatchard is in the house. Kevin,
hello,
how are you,
gents.
sir?
How are we?
Oh, I said it was going to be a Star Wars T-shirt and it was actually an X-Men T-shirt, but I did call that we would get something nerdy.
Is it an X-Men or Xavier?
Yeah, the Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters.
Oh, my God. I'm around a bunch of nerds right now.
Hell, you know that you are.
My son's middle name is Xavier just because we thought it was funny. So we thought we'd name him partially after Professor X. That's what we're dealing with.
I love you so much, Kevin. I don't even know how to launch into this now. Actually, let's talk about Sweden, Graham Potter and the Swedish revival, because truly did not expect them to be able to qualify for this tournament, and yet here we are with them with a very good chance of getting out of the group.
Yeah, I think he's done a really sensible job since he's come in because he's looked at the resource he had, and he thought instead of trying to bring in some overarching new system, how do we get the best out of what we've got? And he absolutely did that. They beat Ukraine, who were a good side in that final. Gyökeres with a hat-trick, and then they got that win against Poland 3-2. Gyökeres got the late winner in that one, so Gyökeres came up big. Isak scored a goal recently for them, so they've got that attacking quality. But you have to bear in mind the mess they were in when Potter came into the job, because Jon Dahl Tomasson, a Danish coach who never really won over the Swedish public, became the first ever Swedish coach to be sacked before the end of his contract. It never happened before. So there's a special achievement for the mantelpiece for him. And they were dreadful in qualifying. They were really, really poor. What got them out of jail was that they'd done well in the Nations League, and therefore they could drop into the playoff as a result of that. And having done that, as you say, they'll look at this group and they'll think that we can do something.
That's why it wasn't really a surprise. I mean, it's 16 nations getting in Europe. You get every chance possible.
Here we go.
All of a sudden, you qualify Nations League, and because you finished last or whatever it was, third place in their group, and somehow you fall in backwards into a World Cup.
Who's the nation who should have got in there instead of Sweden from around the world?
You putting me on the spot?
Yeah, well, you're saying it should be 16 nations in Europe.
But they don't deserve 16 spots, especially Sweden, the way that they performed the World Cup qualifiers. They do not deserve to be here, but they're here nevertheless. And as you mentioned with Alex,
don't deserve to be here.
They don't. I absolutely don't deserve to be here.
They do, because everybody knew what the playoff system was before we started. So I heard this a lot when they got the place, and I heard, it should have been Italy. Italy did this, blah, blah, blah. Italy got home and away by Norway. Italy then went into a playoff, and for the third straight World Cup running, they blew the playoff. Everybody knows what the format is. Now, you might not agree with the format, and that's fine, but when they went into those playoffs, everybody knew what the deal was. They have beaten two really good teams in Ukraine and Poland to get to this point. So now that they're here, it's about Potter then taking that team on a step. So it'd be really interesting to see what they do from here.
It will be, especially since obviously Isak didn't play during that playoff, so Gyökeres was scoring the goals. Now, of course, we didn't see Gyökeres in that friendly, as you mentioned, and Isak, he looked good. He was moving around. He looked very fluid in his substitution appearance that he made and scored a goal as well. The question has always been, how do you get these two guys to work together? Is Isak going to have to work on the left? Is Gyökeres going to be the man in the middle, up top, at the striker position? What is this front three going to look like for Sweden, trying to fit in Isak and Gyökeres?
Yeah, that's the interesting thing, because that's what undid Thomason, really, that he couldn't find a way of getting them to work effectively. He couldn't get the balance right in his team. And you've got Anthony Elanga in there as well, because he, even though he hasn't scored a lot of goals for Newcastle, he's mega, mega quick. And you might need that as an outlet if you're under pressure. So he has got to find that system. He had to make quite a big call in not taking Dejan Kulusevski, because I think he would have been a great link player between midfield and attack, but he hasn't played for Spurs in over a year. It's been a horrible time for him. Didn't take Rooney Bardghji, which is interesting because he's a really interesting attacking player, but he decided that he wasn't going to be the right kind of character at the time. He's got a fair bit of growing up to do, I think, and he felt that it might be more trouble than it was worth. So he has made some big calls already, and it's just going to be whether they can maximise that talent. And I'll be interested to see. I think you're right. I think Gyökeres plays through the middle regardless. It's then where do you deploy Isak? Or in these hot conditions, do you actually just bring Isak on for the final half hour if you need him?
Considering his fitness levels, it absolutely is an option. But, they're going to be facing some tough competitions in Group F. And I'm looking at the Netherlands, and I know I'm around a lot of X-Men fans here, but there's a statistician that has predicted the last 3 World Cups, and this year he is predicting the Netherlands to win the World Cup. They're always kind of this sleepy dark horse team that even if you try to get behind, it never really pans out. But can we see the Netherlands win the World Cup this year?
They're one of the teams that can. I'm not totally convinced. I think they'll go. I think they'll come out this group. I think they can go a fair way. It's just whether up front they'll do enough. Donyell Marlin's in great form, no doubt about it. He was absolutely lights out for Roma in the second half of the season. He helped them qualify for the Champions League. I think he got 14 goals in Serie A. Yeah, I think it was 14, actually. He's a streaky player. So it's just going to be, can he carry on that hot streak into the World Cup, or is he going to disappear? Memphis Depay, he's got to Brazilian football, has been really hit and miss. You don't quite know what you're going to get from him. Xavi being out's a big problem. But the defence in midfield is excellent. So that part of it's sorted. It's just whether they're going to score enough goals.
That is the main question for them. And even with Japan as well, focusing on them, they were a team that I thought could be a sleeper team and a sneaky team in the knockout stage. Then, unfortunately, Matoma, towards the end of the season, suffers a hamstring with Japan and, unfortunately, is not on the World Cup roster with Japan. How big of a blow is that for Japan? And do they have enough depth to make up for the loss of a significant player?
Yeah, I'm not mega worried about them losing Mitoma. He's a very good player. We know that. But I don't think that's the issue for them. The issue for them is just how many players they have with injury problems. Because you do have a fair few, like Wataru Endo, who's missed months for Liverpool with an ankle injury. How fit is he? Because he's an important part of their midfield. You look at somebody like Tomiyasu. I was pretty surprised that he got in, given the problems he's had with injury. So there are big question marks in that regard. But they've got a lot of talent in there. Daichi Kamada's had a great season for Palace. Litz Doan has been a bit hit and miss second half of the season with Frankfurt, but there's a really talented player there. So they do have a lot of quality. And Ayase Ueda, who's the striker who plays for Feyenoord at club level, he's just banged in 28 goals for club and country across the last season. So that's a team that's full of confidence. They believe they can go quite far in this tournament. They did beat Spain. They did beat Germany in the World 4 years ago, and then got edged out by Croatia on penalties. So that potential is there.
I look at this group and I know the Netherlands are becoming a little bit of a hot kind of outsider favourite recently, but I feel like that top three, and no disrespect to Tunisia, I think we'll give all of those teams a game. I wouldn't be surprised to see like a surprising order in the group. I wouldn't be surprised to see that like one of Japan or Sweden actually surprises us and comes out top of that group and really gives us a bit of a story in the early part of this World Cup. Yeah, I'm saying like I wouldn't be that stunned.
Yeah, I think it's one of the stacked groups. if it's not a group of death, it's a group of serious injury, I think. Look at it. And I think Tunisia are going to mess somebody up. I don't think Tunisia will qualify, but I think they'll mess somebody up because they're defensively sound. They're experienced. They've got some quality in midfield. Elias Skiri and Rani Khedira recently agreed to play for them after they chased him for ages. They're both hard as nails in midfield. So they're going to mess somebody up. I'm just not sure who it's going to be. It's one of the most fascinating groups, no doubt about it.
Listen, Kev, I'm going to pivot entirely, and I haven't told anyone I'm going to do this. And this isn't to an X-Men draft, I promise you. They looked at the other side of the draft, and they were other side of the glass, and they were like, "Do an X-Men draft, do an X-Men draft, do an X-Men draft."
I'd walk out of the studio if that happened.
Have you seen the Wolverine trailer, by the way, for the video game, Kev? Oh, it looks sensational.
I have. A lot more gory than I expected.
Yeah, way more violent. I want to ask you, just because as you are one of the hosts of the Trans-Euro Express and someone who follows European football so closely, what you've made of the last 24 hours around the Real Madrid presidential campaign and the Man City saying they're now considering legal action after it was after Haaland and Rodri were cited as being signings and all that's gone on around that story.
I mean, this is just classic presidential election stuff. This has happened for years. Real Madrid hasn't happened for a while because Perez has been all powerful. Perez called this presidential election himself because what he wants is he wants to have his power reinforced, re-legitimized. But this always happens. It's happening in Turkey at the moment with Fenerbahce. They're throwing out all kinds of names. They're saying, yeah, we're going to get Lewandowski. We're going to get Mason Greenwood. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. This is just the empty promises presidents always make. And I think we're used to it by now. I think City thinking about legal action is a bit strong, if I'm honest, because this is just kind of part of the game out there. They're not trying to unsettle Haaland. Haaland's got a 9-year contract or whatever it is. He's not going anywhere. Rodri, I think, is a bit more interesting in the sense that he has, before any of this with the presidential election, he's quite openly talked about potentially joining Real Madrid at some stage and saying it's nice to be linked with the top clubs and whatever. So he's really openly talked about that. And I do find his future fascinating and actually his World Cup fascinating because that knee injury he suffered was really serious. I mean, that was pretty much as complex as knee injury as you can get. And I don't think he's anywhere near the player that he can be at the moment. So be really interested to see how that plays out. But yes, this is usual Spanish presidential election nonsense.
The latest in the last 30 minutes has been that I guess Perez has another trick of his sleeve tonight, going to announce another signing that he promises to make if he gets elected on Sunday. But
didn't he already announce Jose Mourinho last night when he said he wasn't going to do it till after the elections and just...
Yes, I was getting to that part in terms of what happened last night.
It might be Shakira. He might just announce he's going to sign Shakira. It might be that.
Yeah, I mean, you never really know with the whole situation, but it is fascinating that Enrique Riquelme is trying to pull a Fiorentina Perez on Fiorentina Perez, trying to do these surprise signings, and if he doesn't come through with them, then he's going to pay 100% of the membership fees for the socios, and Perez having another trick up his sleeve and dropping a commercial as soon as they go off air with Jose Mourinho wearing a Real Madrid shirt. Does this help the idea that Real Madrid is a stable organization right now, considering everything they just went through this past season?
Yeah, it's quite an interesting switch around, actually, because if you look at the last 2 or 3 seasons, Real Madrid have looked really, really stable in the sense that, you know, their transfer policy has made sense. It hasn't necessarily worked, but it's made sense. And Barcelona have been the ones having to pull the financial levers, having to, you know, really struggle to register players. And they've been the ones who've looked like a bit of a nightmare. But Perez has clearly felt some kind of pressure from somewhere.
Trophyless for 2 seasons. He's the one that
that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
That's a big part of it. And I think the fact as well that Xabi Alonso wasn't really his idea and that he waved it through, but it wasn't his idea. He wasn't fully on board with it. The idea of a kind of technocratic coach who was going to be a bit top down. He wants a strong man, and that's why he's brought Jose Mourinho back, because he feels that's the way to do it. So he's very much Perez's appointment. And on that score, it's kind of got to work.
Is there any world you think it does work? Is there any part of you that sees everything that's happened in the last 6 months and says, yeah, Jose Mourinho's the man to fix that?
I don't think he is. I think it's going to be fun finding out. You can never completely rule him out because he is one of the coaches of his generation. And I don't think it's necessarily even the idea that he's somehow out of touch in the tactical sense, because he does know how to set up a team. It might not be great fun. It might be horrible to watch, but he has shown time and time again he can do it. My biggest concern about him is that all of the kind of stuff we usually see in his third season, we're getting in his first. So Fenerbahce, from the moment he arrived, he was moaning about refs, about the club, about the league, and he didn't win anything. He failed. Then he's got to Benfica, and there's something quite Mourinho about finishing the season unbeaten and finishing third. Yeah, it's really, really quite something to have gone through a whole league season without losing, but you don't finish in the Champions League spots. So they've got the quality to make it work, but at the moment it feels like Barcelona are light years ahead.
There's another banner that Enrique Riquelme just put up in Madrid with the Bernabeu, and it says, "For sale, call Fiorentino Perez." What are you going to do about it? Real Madrid is not for sale. The banners that are going up in Madrid right now, the level of campaigning that is going on, it truly is an all-time moment for this club. And I don't know what comes out of this afterwards, because clearly the fan base is fractured, whether they're pro Mbappe or not, and Mbappe and Perez feel like they're kind of on the same side together here. It doesn't feel like this is going to get better anytime soon.
Yeah, the fan base is an interesting question because, they will boo anyone. They booed Ronaldo, they booed Bale, they've booed Mbappe. I think the Mbappe-Vinicius thing, there's a bit more feeling because as much as we might think sometimes that Real Madrid fans, are a bit snobby, a bit sniffy, what have you, actually, they were quite upset with the way that Xabi Alonso was treated. And we've seen that a few times, actually. And Vinicius is very much seen as a troublemaker in that regard, because it all comes down, when you crystallise it, to that Classico where Vinicius was taken off and he shouted, "This is why I'm leaving. I'm going to go, blah, blah, blah." And they were winning the game. They were just trying to see it out, and he got taken off. And then when he apologised the following day, the one person he didn't apologise to in his statement was Xabi Alonso. And that went down like a lead balloon with the Real Madrid fans.
Well, Xabi came in immediately. Xabi came in immediately, and it was very clear he wanted to set an example of Vinny. And the whole idea was, how do you keep Vinny in check with the emotions coming off of not winning the Ballon d'Or? And during the Club World Cup, it was very obvious Xabi was trying to make an example of Vinicius Jr. In that match, Vinny was going for the kill. He was the best player on the pitch. So I understood why he was upset that he was coming off the pitch, but it just never felt like those two could see eye to eye together, because Xabi really took a stern way of trying to approach Vinicius Jr., and it clearly didn't work. And Vinny has a lot of respect in that locker room, and it seemed like from that point on, the relationship just did not work out.
Yeah, and the more I think about it, the more I think it could never have worked, actually. Unless you were going to give him Luis Enrique-style authority, it was never going to work, because it's not an ungovernable group. But if you bring in a guy that is about the collective, is about squeezing the maximum out of every single player, whether they're Mbappe or, whether they're a youth team player that's just come in, that is difficult to do, because you need somebody who's like an Ancelotti. I mean, the irony is they had the perfect coach.
They did.
You do need somebody who has that tactical acumen, but also knows how to handle a player, and would go up to Toni Kroos and say, well, actually, I don't know. You tell me. How do you want to approach this? Go to Modric and say, lads, we're going into extra time in this Champions League tie. I don't know on my own. Let's work on it together. And empowering players like that is probably the best way to do it, because that's how you get that collective spirit, rather than telling them this is what you have to do. The only way you do that is by doing what PSG have done, and that's to cut off the line between Al Khalifi, the president, and the players. And they've said to him, right, you can't come to me anymore, players. You have to go through the coach. You know, it's his way. If he's going to kick you out, he's going to kick you out. Don't come crying to me and saying, "Oh, the coach is being mean to me." We're not having that anymore. His word is the law. And that was the only way that Luis Enrique would take that job, and it's delivered 2 Champions Leagues.
Brilliant stuff.
Well said.
Kev. Appreciate your time. Thank you very much for joining the show. The brilliant Kev Hatchard. Check out his fine work. Bundesliga commentator. Does brilliant work on the Trans-Euro Express as well. And previewing Group F of this World Cup. Let's turn our attention back to, well, we'll do Group F and Group E, because up next we are turning to an African football expert. To Tunisia, some Cote d'Ivoire. We might even get in a few other nations in there as well.
Cape Verde. Great reception they received in Boston.
All coming up for you on the S Word.
The S Word with Will Gavin and Master Tesfatsion from talkSPORT.
Kickoff to the full-time whistle.
Don't say the S word. Say the F word. Football.
The S Word.
From talkSPORT.
Back with the S Word, and we're going to get straight into it with our next guest, because it's time we took a deep dive into some of the African sides. We're doing Group E and Group F today. That includes the Cote d'Ivoire and Tunisia, but there's a few other sides we may touch on here as well, because the brilliant Rahman Osman joins us on the show. Rahman, how are you doing, sir? He applauded as well. I'm a huge fan of that. Beautiful stuff. Listen, we are talking Group E and Group F today, so let's start off with the Cote d'Ivoire. What are their chances at this World Cup? How's the feeling of that nation ahead of this tournament? Can't hear him, I'm afraid, guys. We've got no sound. I don't know if you're muted on your end, Rahman, or whether that's something at our end, but we are seeing you. You look stunning. We cannot hear you, unfortunately. Oh, hold on.
We got him?
Can you hear me?
There we go. Yeah, we're welcoming it back in.
There we go.
Talk to us, Cote d'Ivoire.
I'm in a stunning cafe in King's Cross in London, but I'm going to try as much as possible to give you a fair representation of the feeling the Ivory Coast. The Ivory Coast is such a really, it's a weird country when it's come to football in the last 5 years. So you remember that 2 years ago, during the AFCON, they sacked their manager midway through the competition, and they went on to win it. It was such an inspiring story at that time. Then just this year, they went to the AFCON in Morocco, and they got to the quarterfinal. They couldn't defend their tournament. What that has meant, though, is that they've been able to make some big changes for the World Cup. You would have known that Wilfred Zaha has been dropped for it because of these things. And also Sebastian Halle. Now, Halle was such a big part of this Ivorian team for a number of reasons. He came back from cancer. He influenced the team. And his story of just fighting cancer and being part of the Ivory Coast team that won the AFCON was such a big deal at that time. But their manager, Iman Sfai, he's a brutal man. He only wants results. And in the last 6 months, Halle hasn't been informed. He's dropped in for Gusand. And Gusand, for those who watch the Premier League will know him. He plays for Crystal Palace, dangles his head like Eberechi Eze, and he's going to be a very big part of how they play. They have some really good Premier League players. You know Amad Diallo. Now, Amad Diallo is the face of Ivorian football. And if they can get Diallo performing in the first half of the season when he was playing against Ten Hag, then they have a chance. But they have another 24-year-old boy who plays for Inter Milan, Bonny. I don't know if you had heard him. France wanted him to play for France. He said, no, I want to play for the Ivory Coast. And so he will also be a key part of him. This is the first time he'll be playing in a major competition for the Ivorians, and a lot has been made of him. Now, with these young boys, they are backed by so much experience. Seko Fofana of FC Porto is in that team. Michel Serre, who used to play at Fulham, is also in that team. And Frank Kessie. These days he plays his football in Saudi Arabia, but Kessie's experience, he's been given the engine of that team to drive them from midfield. They were hit with a big blow, I should say, in preparation. They looked Akpa plays for Auxerre. He's their left back, but he's not just only their left back. He's a left back that can play in central defense also as a left-centered defender. They've lost him to a hamstring injury. He will not be at the World Cup. They brought in Opari, who plays for Istanbul Basaksehir. Now, he's got experience. He's a 29-year-old defender, but he doesn't have the flexibility of Opari. But generally, the Ivorian team is good. I should mention also RB Leipzig's Diamond, who's been linked with some of the big clubs in the Premier League, is also in there. So Ivory Coast is tagged. The problem is that will the experience and youth be enough to go through the group that has Germany, Ecuador, and Curacao? I feel that they've got enough, but with African countries, it's more of the belief. They need to play with a lot of belief. This is the first World Cup. We have 10 African countries, so I'm very confident that with an increased number of Africans, this World Cup will mean a lot, and maybe Ivory Coast could be the surprise package.
Yeah, I mean, it's a deep nation, as you talked about some of these players and the unfortunate injuries, as you mentioned, left back, but even when I was watching them at AFCON, it's always so many possibilities who you play up top. You know, you mentioned Yan Diamande, you mentioned Ghislain, you mentioned Amad Diallo, you mentioned Basuma Torre, who I love watching him at Hoffenheim. He's a fantastic 20-year-old winger that can really change the game with his pace and his fluidity. What do you think that front three looks like for Ivory Coast? Who do you think they will consistently roll with to get the best and the best opportunities in this competitive group?
Diallo, Amad Diallo. I like Diallo. I mean, I think that he plays at Man United and just the level at which he operates, he won't be intimidated by the stage of playing in the World Cup. And Ivory Coast have always flattered to deceive him in when the skies are high. But they need players like Diallo to step up. So I think with him, a lot of people don't rate people who play in Saudi Arabia, but Frank Kessie is still very good. I mentioned how he's been given the keys to this team to dictate the tempo of this team. And also their manager. Football can be very brutal, and you need a manager who makes brutal decisions. The call-ups that he's made, the way he's gone about preparing for this team, is ensured that there's little family distractions. He said that if the team is going to be connected with their families, they will have to do it when they're at the tournament. So they've had camp outside where there's little distractions, and they just want to focus because it's a group that they can easily progress. But if they underestimate, say, Ecuador or Curacao, then they will be in big trouble. So his limited noise, I think that one of the things that hold Africans behind mostly at the World Cup is not the lack of players or talent. is the direction in which they go, the technical directions. And Emansfai, I mean, has proven that he can do that. I'm also highlighting the fact that he was able to drop somebody like Wilfred Zaha, and Zaha wanted to go to this World Cup. But again, just to keep the team focused and logged in, he decided that regardless of the talent or ammunition somebody like Zaha would bring, he just doesn't want to come with the package that he brings to.
In terms of the other nations, African nations, obviously, as you mentioned, a record 10 African nations in this World Cup. Which nation do you feel has the best chance to make a deep run? Is it Morocco? Is it Cote d'Ivoire? Senegal? We get a surprise nation like Cape Verde. What a crazy story that is. Someone in my ears telling me Ghana, Gabs, which I don't believe in Ghana at all. But who are you believing in?
Senegal. I mean, if you look at the kind of players Senegal have got, honestly, if they have the right direction of technical knowledge, they could be a menace for any other team. Look at Sadio Mane might be on his way out, but that team, Nicolas Jackson, if you want to speak about Mamadou Sarr, if you want to speak about Iliman Ndiaye from Everton, if you want to speak about the Senegalese team is packed with refined top-level footballers who have shown in the last 4 years consistency. Before they won the AFCON, they reached to the final, they lost to Algeria, they came back 2 years later, and then won it, went to the final this year. Okay, CAF have said they are not the winner, but they got to the final, won it against Morocco, and then all that chaos that came. So Senegal, for me, is the best African nation when it comes to talent. But Morocco, look at what they did in the last World Cup. The first African team to get to the last four. Then they built that by getting to the final of the AFCON. So Morocco has there. We've mentioned the Ivory Coast. Ghana was the first country to reach the quarterfinal in 2010. 16 years down the line, they don't have maybe the luxury of Mohamed Kudus or maybe even Djikou, who's one of their best defenders. But you can never rule out Ghana. And so African teams are coming prepared. Even DR Congo, honestly, you need to keep an eye on DR Congo. They are really a very well-drilled side. They denied Cameroon a chance at the World Cup, and they play some of the best football on the African continent at the moment, with a lot of interesting Premier League stars fused in that team. So yes, these teams all will have a chance. The biggest problem is the technical direction, if you ask me, and that is really important at this level. But one thing that's going to work for Africans, and a lot of people don't highlight this, is the weather. It's going to be a very hot World Cup we're going to have in America. England are already training with technology devising stuff just to keep up with the weather, and Africans are used to the weather.
See, I was going to ask about this because you talk about the technical direction, talk about it's the weather, but it's also the travel. It's the everything that goes with the kind of professionalism of the tournament is the wrong thing to say, but the infrastructure of some of the nations coming out of Europe, coming out of North America, etc. They are spending millions and millions and millions on just simple things like traveling to the games and the chefs and all of that kind of thing. So, do you think that's going to be telling for some of these nations that they are going to have to, be traveling all over the country, the weather as well? That all of those things are going to come into it?
Yeah, the logistics. The logistics are really important, especially for major tournaments like the World Cup. Teams normally want to have stability, so we stay here and the weather is conducive to play in this direction, but they're not going to have that kind of stability now. Some, like Ghana, example, Ghana is playing their first game in Toronto, then they travel back to Boston to play England, then they finish up in Philadelphia. The traveling time, the recovering time, these are going to be important. Then aside that also, number of games played. Classical example, England will arrive with players from Arsenal, Saka and co. They would have played almost 50 games. Now, how do you manage that? How do you keep that? Brazil have the same problems. When you have top players who come into the tournament with 60 games, you'll have to recover them different to those who have played 30. Will that have a tailing effect? We won't know until the tournament starts. Food science, like literally most countries now are paying heavy money for dietitians because just keeping players fueled for the tournament will be key. Then also the set pieces that has dominated this year's leagues. Like Arsenal won the league mainly because they were smart and brute with set pieces. Will teams decide to go less physical and focus on set pieces? These are all questions the World Cup will answer to us when we get there. And so it's not just going to the African countries that have to adapt to the tournament. Like in the past, even the European countries will have to overcome some of these challenges they haven't had in previous tournaments.
The big, like he's about not only the heat, but you travel around Africa for AFCON qualifiers, your World Cup you're taking sometimes longer flights than you would for this World Cup. So, I mean, traveling from one side of Africa to the other, having the layovers, the difficult logistics of some nations not allowing other nations in, it's honestly, this could be a smoother travel and heat situation than what African countries are used to, and that could be an advantage in this World Cup. So.
Rahman Osman, we appreciate you for your time. Thank you so much. You're busy getting ready for the World Cup, so we'll let you go there. But thank you very much, sir. Really appreciate your time.
Pleasure.
Beautiful stuff. I did forget, actually. I forgot to Simon Jordan earlier, which I was just so involved in the conversation that I never actually got into it. If you missed Simon Jordan on the show earlier, by the way, it's going to go up on YouTube shortly, and you can go back and check that within the stream. I've been ignorant to the stream today, and I feel bad that I have been, because there's been lots of chat going on. So we'll get into some of those coming up shortly. We'll get into some of your message, and in the next section, I'm going to talk about whether you think the group stage is actually going to work at this World Cup. And I'm going to get your views on beans on toast.
Oh, God.
It's all
bringing
coming.
all the biggest football debates.
Stateside.
The S Word.
From talkSPORT. presents
The S Word.
Get your full-on football fix from across the football galaxy.
The S Word
from talkSPORT.
I'm just vibing. Sorry, am I meant to be talking?
Just gonna let it ride. Welcome back.
Why not?
Welcome back to the S Word, powered by talkSPORT. If you haven't already,
you just go talk sports.
talkSPORT. That's it.
I thought you were talk sports. So we're doing full American.
Yeah. talkSPORT. Offsides. If you are tuning in on the S Word channel, appreciate you. If you're tuning in on talkSPORT, we appreciate you as well. But we ask, give us a follow on @talkSPORT S Word on YouTube, X, and Instagram. If you ever want to come in, chip in, say something here, challenge an American, think you know more than American does, hey, there's our WhatsApp phone number right there. Give us a call, give us a text. Love to get you involved in the show. And as Will promised, we have a ton of comments.
I apologize to the chat.
It's been a big show. It's been a big show.
Defermo just messaged. The first message of the day we got was just Defermo getting in the chat on the S Word channel going, yeehaw.
There you go. I feel like we got to start every show like that, right?
Yeehaw! Do I give you a better one?
No.
I
was thinking of that one.
You still haven't clipped Ooh Football yet. Thanks, I'm pretty thankful for that. I'm not going to lie.
There it is.
Gabs! Simon Jordan. Larry comes in saying Simon Jordan with some proper clobber on. If you missed Simon Jordan at the beginning of the show, brilliant stuff. Billy Edgley gets in and talks about FIFA banning fans from bringing water bottles into the games. We're going to talk about that momentarily. He says the World Cup joke gets funnier every single day. And LMRV says, for the World Cup, can we at least call it football? That's the joke of the show. The S word is soccer. It's
Until England beats America in the World Cup, it's called soccer, baby.
The meme of the German action star in The Simpsons and the joke going over his head. That was the joke. Yeah, that's you know.
That's the joke.
I've ruined it for everyone. We will talk water bowls, but first I want to talk. Do you want to talk Beans on total group stages?
We're talking what?
Water bowls. Very Reading. No teas. Just water bowls. Absolute water bowls fair.
The comments talking about water bottles will start there.
All right. FIFA. Amongst the fact that we are hearing that they have been accused of using the website SeatGeek, which, by the way, if you missed Jim White saying the word SeatGeek on a SeatGeek so many times over and over again, it was sensational radio. The accusations that they are selling $700 tickets on SeatGeek for $200 and that really it's just them and it's not a secondary ticket sales, between the fact that the tickets are the most expensive they've been for any World Cup by a country mile, that you're having to pay $16,000 to get into the car park at the World Cup final and everything else. They're now banning fans from bringing water bottles into games. You were at these World Cup World Cup games last year. You experienced this Heatmaster. Like, come on, health and safety. This is madness.
I think this is a disaster waiting to happen, banning water bottles from this World Cup, because the inaccessibility of finding water will be a major problem in this World Cup, as it was in the Club World Cup last year. You turn to some of the early matches in Pasadena at the Rose Bowl, where it was excessively hot. It was very obvious in the conditions, even though that's not a World Cup stadium, that was a major problem. But I experienced it personally myself. When I covered the World Cup as a pitchside reporter, I literally witnessed and experienced fans passing out in stadiums that were open and exposed to the heat and the conditions. And you know, whether it was me as a reporter or also me as a fan, in particular at MetLife, where in the afternoon it feels like an absolute oven trying to go to that stadium, FIFA's making an absolute disastrous decision by banning water bottles, because I had no accessibility to find water at halftime in the 15 minutes that I got, because the lines were way too long, and by the time you get there, some of the stands were already out of water as it began with, because it was
and you're probably paying $12 a bottle,
and you're paying $12 a bottle for water. It's too expensive, it's inaccessible, and the lines make it very difficult to do so. I was sweating through my shirt. And when I was covering the Club World Cup, when fans were passing out, I literally was going in the back room, in the media room, to grab bottles of water to hand them out to fans, because they were literally pleading and begging to do so. And you're trying to do the best in terms of the players, the health and safety of the fans. And I think that's something right now FIFA's not keeping in mind right now. Like, you have to make sure that these fans are the health and condition of the fan has to be be accounted for here, over the profitability of these $12 bottle of waters and whatever sponsors come with that. I think that this is going to come back to bite them, and I think they'll end up having to change this policy, because there's no way on earth that this will not turn out to be a disastrous decision.
Even if you just make it that it's plastic bottles, even if the concern is if people are bringing in, the kind of aluminum, like, the Owalas or whatever it is, not that they sponsor us, but do if you want to. Like, those are hefty things. Like, my wife has a water bottle, which is honestly bigger than my head, which is pretty sizable. And it's heavy. And, like, I get it. You don't want people bringing those things into games. But let them bring their own plastic bottle of water in. Either have it sealed and let them bring that in, or, like, if it's an unsealed bottle, you pour the liquid out and then they can go and fill it up from water points. Whatever that is, it's just basic. Water should be a human right. And it's amazing that they are stopping people from being able to access that without having to pay exorbitant fees for it.
The FIFA's heat safety measures for this tournament are, quote, inadequate, according to scientists, where temperatures at 14 of the 16 host venues are set to exceed dangerous levels. Take that what you will. I have seen and experienced here in Europe how people respond to excessive heat, and I promise you, it is only hotter in America, especially on the East Coast. This will be a major problem for countries and fans that are not accustomed to this. The heat would be a major, major problem, especially for those stadiums outdoors.
Is there a world, and look, we've probably not got enough time between now and 2:57 to break down global warming or anything like that, but we are seeing more extreme temperatures. We are seeing summers, which, like, the last few weeks we saw in England before the rain came back, like 35 degrees was the hottest it's ever been in May. Those things are happening more and more and more, and you're seeing these more and more extreme temperatures. Is there a world where a Winter World Cup in the Middle East becomes a Winter World Cup wherever it is in the world? Like, there's going to be an African World Cup, and I know we're getting it in Morocco as part of the next tournament. Games in Morocco in June and July. Games in the southern parts of Spain and Portugal in June and July. In Uruguay, where it's going to be. In Argentina, where they're going to be opening up the World Cup as well. Those games could top out over 40 degrees centigrade, well over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Like, I can see a world where we get those mid-season World Cups becomes the norm within the next 20 years.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. Obviously, in the southern hemisphere, it's wintertime during the summer for the northern hemisphere. So in terms of the calendars and the seasons, sure, it's a possibility. But I think you lose sight of the fact that one of the biggest issues with the Qatar World Cup was that a lot of people usually take holiday time off in the summertime to go experience this beautiful tournament. And if you do that during November, December, that's a lot of time the holiday seasons. Are people going to want to spend time away from their families and loved ones as they do annually for this tournament? Obviously, some will, but it's a huge burden to ask the global fan as if they want to celebrate Christmas or celebrate the downtime, celebrate the holidays, celebrate the new year, or you celebrate football. It's a difficult proposition. And as much as we're making fun of the ticket situation here in the U.S., the tickets were very cheap in Qatar, and some of those stadiums weren't sold out either. And that had a big reason and a big issue to deal with that. So as much as it sounds great from a weather perspective, I think you kind of lose some of the essence of it, and it's another barrier, unfortunately, for the fans. So, I mean, just let them bring water in. It's not that hard. Bring some water in, please.
I'm trying to figure out if we've got enough time to do this group stage conversation. It feels like it could be a whole segment on another day, and I do want to talk about beans on toast with you. But do you want me to just throw it out there? I'll throw the stat, and if we want to go deeper on it, we can do later.
Should I get a coin?
This comes from Mark O'Hare. This comes from Mark O'Hare on Twitter, who also, by the way, pointed out, our Palace stat earlier. Palace with 12 players in this World Cup. Real Madrid only 11. It is astonishing that Palace are taking more players to the World Cup than Real. Only Man City with 19, Bayern with 18, Arsenal with 16, PSG with 16, and Barcelona with 15.
That's ridiculous.
Are sending more players to the World Cup than Crystal Palace. Literally 6 of the biggest clubs in world football. Do you like that? I included Arsenal in that.
He did. And the pride of South London.
There we go, baby. There we go. Am I the pride of South London? Oh, you meant Crystal Palace. But Mark also tweeted yesterday. So Mark is a betting and odds analyst. He has run a simulation of the World Cup 100,000 times. Right? One thing that's already clear about the new 48-team format, if you get 6 points, if you win 2 of your games, you qualify 100% of the time. If you get 4 points in the group stage, the supercomputer noise can come in if you wanted to. If you get 4 points, you qualify 99.8% of the time. If you get 3 points in the group, you still qualify 67% of the time, and 2 points, you qualify 5% of the time. So win one game. In fact, 3 points and at least a -2 goal difference will get you through way more often than not. We are looking at a group stage now where just win one game and you're basically through. Win one game and don't get hammered in your other 2 games, basically. I think that makes for a slightly more boring first 2 weeks of the World Cup. I think those last two group stage games where they're played head to head, is there going to actually be that much on the line at that point?
Because if a team wins that has 0 points, they get 3 points, all of a sudden the table can flip. I think the pessimism that's existing for this expanded World Cup, I completely disagree with this. We just went through 2 groups today, Group E and Group F, that we literally could not figure out how these groups are going to play out in terms of who finishes first and who finishes last. And some of these teams that, you know, whether you want to give them a chance or not, they're there playing for pride. They could steal a point from them, as we talked about with Tunisia. If Tunisia gets a point or they get, you know, a win early on, all of a sudden all bets are off. Who is going to finish last in that group and who's not going to make it into the knockout stage?
The other concern I have is that, yes, okay, all of that is potentially true, but you are going to have a nerd, a supercomputer on hand, boobly boppling away, because the third place finishes, you're not going to know actually who's going to be one of the best third place finishes.
That is so much fun, though.
But it's not when it's Group A and Group B, and you're like, you finished third. Now you have to wait 3 days to find out if you stay in the World Cup. That's irritating as hell.
We did this with the AFCON qualifiers because unfortunately Eritrea had to did not participate, so it led to third place qualifying teams. And I literally sat there every day recalculating every single third place situation, looking at the goal differentials, goals for, goals against. If you like these kind of things, especially you love the NFL, calculating the draft odds and probabilities, you know, in the final week of the season, who's going to get the number 1 pick, who's going to get the second pick, the playoff tiebreaker situations. That's what you're going to get.
You don't think that's overcomplicated for the average fan?
No, but it's sure, but
it's good for the nerds.
But
you're more of a nerd than you like to let on. Clearly.
I like I like chaos. And this brings more chaos. 2022. Remember when Japan, that group that they were in with Germany, how insane that was. That as soon as was it Costa Rica? When Costa Rica scored, all of a sudden the entire group flipped.
But you're not going to know
that 10 minutes was one of the best 10 minutes I've ever experienced in the World Cup. And I think you're going to get a lot of that in this group stage. I think a lot of people are underestimating the chaos that will come from this expanded World Cup. I do.
Chaos!
I love chaos, and I'm here for the chaos.
And finally, I want to talk to you about beans on toast. Because there was an article today, and they covered this brilliantly on Breakfast this morning with Ali and Gabby, was they talked about the pre-game meals that they had in order to, you know, whether it be carbo load, up their protein or whatever else. Well,
what's your pre-game meal?
I mean, you know that I eat beans on toast when I first get into work.
I see a lot of yogurt, though.
I do love a yogurt.
Yogurt, mancha!
A little 22-gram protein yogurt before the show. That's good. Protein all the way, baby.
Big protein. What the protein England is eating?
England players will be tin it to win it at the World Cup.
Jesus.
By eating beans on toast before their games. Oh, yes. One of the classic comfort foods is being used as rocket fuel for the England team. Wholemeal toast, beans on top, maybe whack some cheese on as well.
Cheese and beans and toast?
Oh, it's the best. And it's a great source of protein, and it's going to get the players ready for these games. And if England win the World Cup, it will be because beans means wins. Oh, yeah. Beans on toast is powering the England team, and I am proud, never been more proud to be English.
I've never been more pessimistic about the England national team now. I thought Thomas Tuchel was going to put some sense into this English team, bringing some of his pragmaticism into this nation. And
this is pragmatism.
No, it's
not. A great source of protein.
There's other sources of protein that you can eat.
And it's excellent.
You're going to need a longer halftime break. That's all I know. It's 15 minutes may not be enough. You may need Shakira out there for an extra 10 minutes if England's going to be playing, because that is just absolutely disgusting.
Thomas Tuchel is meticulous. He looks at his players' body fat percentages, their sleep schedules, their nutrition, and he has decided, along with some of the finest chefs in the world, that beans on toast is the way to go. No one's doing that about grits. No one's doing that about
rather have grits
maple syrup covered bacon.
Toast.
No one's doing that about the nonsense.
Let's not talk. America makes so much better breakfast than England does. You guys eat the same thing over and over again. Your soggy bacon, your beans and toast, just some nasty eggs. Like there's nothing great about it.
Oh, eggs are way
the
better
way you guys cook
in
sausage or pork.
The way eggs
or
are
ham,
cooked in America
it's absolutely
is
disgusting.
A borderline disgrace.
It's
Your
disgusting.
Scrambled eggs are rubbish. Your fried eggs are dreadful.
Fried eggs are fantastic.
Eggs
the poached eggs
better.
that we do, the omelets that we make.
You can't mess up a poached egg, really.
You
can mess it up in the cooking, but in terms of if you've got a professional outputting it, it's the same every time, right? But my point is your fried eggs, rubbish.
It's
your
wonderful.
Scrambled eggs,
nice
rubbish.
little yolk running. You know, I mean, let's see what the U.S. is being powered by, because I promise you, it's a much better breakfast, a much more balanced breakfast than beans and frickin' toast with cheese.
Yeah, I mean, the cheese. I added the cheese in. The cheese hasn't been mentioned for the England players. Probably not best for the England players, but cheese is definitely the one. Little cheese on top,
and that's all you eat.
Add a little soy sauce to the beans as you're cooking them.
You're doing the most now.
Add a little soy sauce to the beans.
This looks like
dark soy sauce,
terrible.
and it just caramelizes those beans a little bit.
This looks like sounds like one of those terrible TikTok recipes that you see from like random suburban moms trying to show you how you can make a easy breakfast for your family in 5 minutes.
Oh yeah, and where are all of those videos from? America. They're all people just whacking. I put all of this in the thing, and then I put a whole block of cream cheese in the middle, and then I poured some gravy over the top. We stir it in, we whack it in the smoker for 15 hours, and then I get this delicious slop.
And I bet you that tastes much better than beans and toast with cheese and soy sauce. What is this? Soy sauce.
You get the soy sauce in at the cooking stage, and it just caramelizes.
What are you cooking?
Gives you a little umami to it. We heat the beans up. You just have cold beans.
That's what
have
it
you
looks.
eaten beans on toast before?
No, I have not.
You slate it, and you've never tried it.
I've had beans. I've had toast. I do not want beans and toast.
Beans on toast.
Beans on toast. Beans with toast. Green eggs and ham. Sam I am. Killer Cam. No way in my life will I ever am.
If England win the World Cup, and I'm really setting the bar way too high here. If England win the World Cup on July 20th, will you sit here in this studio next to me and try some proper beans on toast?
I will do it. If England wins the World Cup, I'll do it. If England and the U.S. so happen to face off in the knockout stage and England beats America, I will stuff my face with some of the finest beans and toast this ridiculous country has to offer.
If USA beat England, I'll actually eat a bowl of grits.
Okay. You got yourself a deal.
Done. I'm not going to shake hand. I'm all sweaty.
I already think about the grits.
I got all excited about the beans on toast. I'll give you a little fist bump. How about that? We'll be back tomorrow. More group stage previews for the World Cup as we build up. Just 7 days away, baby. The World Cup is almost here. Thank you for watching the S Word.
The daily deep dive into the world of football. The S Word from talkSPORT.